Welcome to What If I Don't Like It? I'm your host, KT Baldessaro, and this episode we'll be talking with Scott Tundermann about the 1984 sci-fi comedy, Ice Pirates. Scott, our guest from this episode, is part of that short film. He helped do some of the prop work, some of the lighting, and you can see him as the slender person, I don't want to get sued, in the end bits as well. It's really exciting. It was very fun to get to do this. I am really happy to have found a reason in the Just Scare Me Collective to get back into making films in a way that is just very much embracing the process and very much not about, oh my god, if it's not perfect, I can't give this to anyone to see. They call themselves a gymnasium, a gym where you go to strengthen your filmmaking skills. People are really, really supportive. If you're unfamiliar, again, the Just Scare Me Collective is a thing for horror movies under 6 minutes long. You sign up for a round. You get 2 months, 60 days, to make, finish, put the whole thing together and get it back to them. And if you don't, you owe the whole group $100. So you have a deadline and a small wager making you make something, and you'd be surprised how that's just enough. Especially if you're a filmmaker with ADHD, there is nothing like a deadline to motivate you. You can catch me on Movie Night Extravaganza this coming Tuesday, the 18th of July. Of course, if you're not listening to this in real time, these are episodes that are going to be up on YouTube after the fact. They are live, so you can join us for the conversation. You can pipe up, join in, say whatever you like. It's a good, fun time. But if you miss out on it, you can also listen to it after the fact by going to the YouTube link that will be included in the liner notes here. That link will also get you to the live show. That's Tuesday the 18th, live at 8 p.m. That's Eastern Standard Time. I'll be filling in for host Conan Neutron, who is joining the Australian band Dead for the back end of their US tour. You might remember Conan from our episode about Moonstruck. I'm very excited to get to do this for him. I've done it before in the past. It's always a trade-off because I don't get to talk to Conan when I'm on the episode. I'm filling in for him. But, they're big shoes to fill, and I always feel blessed to get to fill them. We're going to be talking about Sean Baker's 2015 crime comedy Tangerine with Bam from the We Made It podcast, The Power Report, and Audio Face as part of their Pride Month. It's very hard not to want to say we're talking about Sean Bean's Tangerine, but no, it's Sean Baker. Getting back on track, why haven't I seen Ice Pirates? Well, to cut right to the chase, I haven't really heard of Ice Pirates. I definitely know that Scott will bring it up every once in a while as a movie that he liked from when he was a kid, and it just kind of Teflons on me. I get it confused with the 2005 porno called Just Pirates, and I'm not sure why he's telling me it's a film he watched as a kid. And we get down that rabbit hole. No real ill will towards it. I tend to like fantasy from the 80s. I tend to like comedy like Spaceballs, things like that. I just really haven't heard about it. And talking to a lot of my friends who are into film, who watch pretty much anything, they also have not heard of it. So we picked one that's pretty obscure for you here. And we're going to try out kind of exactly what happened with me in So I Married an Axe Murderer. This is a film I had strong feels about. I remembered enjoying and laughing at it. It's a comedy, so it's going to be subjective. Time has passed. I don't know if the jokes age well. But I feel, confident. Not really. Somewhat confident in showing this to someone much later on to see if they'll like it as well. That's the boat that Scott's in right now. He has not seen Ice Pirates in a very, very long time. Probably not since he was a kid. I do believe in the first part we'll cover that. And we want to see whether or not now coming back to it, did it age well? There were definitely parts of So I Married an Axe Murderer that did not particularly age well. So we have this conundrum. When you think about what if I don't like it, and our premise, watching movies that you haven't seen because you were afraid you might not like them, you feel like a lot of the burden is on the viewer. But now that we're mixing it up a little bit and we're allowing guests to recommend stuff, it's becoming more obvious that there's also a burden on the person who's recommending the film. What if I recommend something and I don't like it anymore. We're going to delve into that and much more on this episode, so tune in as we see what happens.
At last, the space comedy you didn't know you were waiting to see. The Ice Pirates. In the far distant future, in a galaxy where those in the know don't go, real estate is cheap, and they've got great sushi. But there's no water.
You got any water?
It is a time when desperate men will swing from the chandeliers.
Welcome to episode 14. I am joined by our very first ever guest, my husband, Scott Tundermann, and we're going to talk about a film that they have brought to me to watch, as our theme this month is I will be watching films that I might not like from our guests from episode 1 and episode 2.
And this is a twist on the take beyond the twist, which is that we both might not like it. I haven't seen this movie since I was a kid, and I remember it only dimly and in tiny glimpses. So we'll see. But I think it'll be a fun thing to check out.
That's really funny because episode 2 with Ari was inadvertently a movie that we both had not seen. She assumed that I had seen Bad Boys and I had not. And so we kind of, it's funny because Ari is doing an episode where she's definitely seen it. Like me and So I Married an Axe Murderer, which was our first ever episode. And now this is kind of switched around where we're both going to go back and watch it. Although you have seen it once?
Yes, at least once. I mean, yeah. I think I certainly didn't see it in the theater, but it was on cable when I was a adolescent. So so we're gonna check out Ice Pirates, and I think it's an interesting intersection of a lot of stuff in cinema in 1984. So and incidentally, 1984 was a bonkers year for movies like Dune and Splash and Ghostbusters and Gremlins, and it just like an incredible number of really memorable movies came out in 1984.
That's really interesting because when I think of all of those IPs, with the exception of Dune being Frank Herbert's novel, like those are pretty creative, what winds up becoming franchise kinds of things in their first iteration. Ghostbusters being that like lifelong stories of Dan Aykroyd's actual ghost hunting crazy ass family.
Check us out
But
in a future
were any of those yes, we did a whole new episode on that, yes. Were any of those films well received when they actually came out?
I think so. I mean, Ghostbusters did great. Gremlins did great.
Okay.
Yeah, there were. It was a big
Dune
year for
less
movies.
so. Yeah.
Yeah, Dune was troubled. We've talked in the past about the incredible relationship I have to cinema in 1984, which was when the PG-13 rating came along, and
Yes!
my father thought that taking his then 10-year-old son to see movies like The Razor's Edge and Dune was a good choice for a weekend visit. Like, oh my god! I mean, he could have taken me to Gremlins or Ghostbusters. I think I saw Ghostbusters with my grandparents, his parents, because my grandparents had been married in the church that the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man steps on, and my grandma hollered out in the theater, "Hey, that's our church!"
Oh, that's fantastic. That's fantastic.
Pretty much the best thing that could be yelled in a movie. Like, that was such a great. I hope everybody in that theater remembers that to this day. Some crazy lady started screaming because he stepped on her church.
God, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
That makes me think of Patton Oswalt and he loves Jerry Maguire when it ends in his bonus.
Oh, God damn it.
God damn it. Yeah, no, that's great. That's how I want to watch this movie. Although every once in a while, like very blue moon, I'll watch a movie and forget that I'm in it in like a background level,
Yeah, right.
and I'll just shout out one. And I'll be totally actually, I was talking to Ari on the last episode, and she's like, "Oh god, this horrible movie Pink Panther 2." And I'm like, "Oh, I'm in that one."
Wow.
So I wonder if anybody gets to experience that. Some random ass lady just screams out, "I'm in this," and I didn't even really see her in the movie.
Yeah, right. Yep, yep.
I'm in the background eating that
Adds
cookie.
adds a little color.
That is adorable though. So,
Yeah.
because I sometimes think about movies in the 80s as being like, this movie was fantastic. Oh, this is a great movie, great movie, great movie. And like, I find out that Lady Hawk is not considered a great movie, and everybody thinks it's the worst soundtrack ever made. And I am left plussed.
Well, they're all wrong about that one in particular. Um, yeah, it's. I mean, with Ice Pirates, this is. I want to send a shout out to our mutual friend Ben, who is the king of positive nostalgia. Like he remembers movies that were amazing, and he shows them to us as his friends, and they are an embarrassment to him as well as us and the filmmakers. And it's like he's got the thing where pregnant women forget about how bad childbirth was for media. Like he somehow only remembers the good parts and completely erases from his memory all of the terrible parts. So he remembers these, like a cartoon movie that he saw when he was 12 as like, oh, it was so cool and it had these amazing special effects and like the story. And so we'll watch it and I can feel him squirming next to me like, oh, this is not what I remembered. And I'll sort of steal a glance over at him and he's sweating bullets and like, yeah, it's okay, Ben. We don't have to finish this. And he's like, yeah, no, this is like I'm seeing things that I remember, but in my head they were all so much better put together.
He
So
edits it right. He's a good editor in his brain.
right, right. Yeah, he does the 20th anniversary re-release just in his head.
Although will say that Kronos, I do hold that I think Kronos is a good film, even though
Agreed.
it was received poorly. But I will not support him on Hudson Hawk. He can go die on that hill alone.
Well, that that actually gets an honorable mention in some of the articles about ice pirates, which is in
Woo! It's the
and
singing. I don't like the singing.
okay. I as far as I can remember, there isn't any singing in Ice Pirates, but we might find out I'm wrong about that. Um,
It's
but
the musical.
so what happened with Ice Pirates is that somebody had like a treatment for a picture called like Water Planet or something, and it was this
Mhm.
futuristic sci-fi, like a big sci-fi production where you know the universe is has gotten to the point where water is the most precious resource, and there's intergalactic conflict over water, and it was
Oh, so it's
supposed to be a
Waterworld.
well. Funny you should mention that because Costner turned down the leading role in this picture. Um,
Ah!
before he was anyone. Like he didn't
Regrets!
he didn't do the Untouchables until 1987. Um, but he had like done a couple of things by 1984, but he wasn't Kevin fucking Costner. It was supposed to be a $20 million picture, and the studio, which was MGM, were like on the brink of bankruptcy, and
Okay.
their financiers limited them to an $8 million per movie budget. So they said, well, and they had a director, I guess, or they brought it to the director and said, can you do it on for 8 million? And he said, well, we're going to have to kind of rewrite it as like a comedy, as like a spoof, and not as like a serious sci-fi epic. And they're like, do whatever you have to do. We got to make this picture. So um, so it got really, really restructured as kind of a tongue-in-cheek thing, and it seems like a lot of people either didn't get the joke or didn't realize that's what was going on. Similar to Hudson Hawk, right? Like
Uh,
Hudson Hawk doesn't take itself seriously. It's kind of a spoof. It's kind of a lark. It's this cutesy thing with Aiello and Bruce being cute and doing this like show tunes nonsense caper movie. So that is a comparison that gets made with Ice Pirates.
if I might interject for a second, I think two things that are important to note about this is that $8 million, I really want to put that in perspective. Ghostbusters, first one, comes out same year as this movie. Obviously, you are going to expect more special effects because, like you said, you're camping it up. It is a $30 million endeavor to do Ghostbusters. Hudson Hawk, made in 1991, is a $75 million movie.
No, for what? I mean,
I'm
for
sorry,
Bruce Willis coming off of
65.
okay,
It's a $65 million movie. Not much better.
yeah,
Yes.
no, still, I mean, like an order of magnitude greater for Bruce Willis and Danny Aiello and Richard, what's his name, the hilarious villain character. Anyway, there's no special effects. There's there's just locations in Italy or whatever. Huh. All right. Well, I guess
Yeah.
moonlighting really was a big thing.
Paid $5 million to be in Die Hard 1, which is kind of like the launch of his career, and they really
Yeah.
fought him on that. So you could assume he probably accounts for like $5 to $10 million of the $65 million Hudson Hawk budget. But like $8 million, let's really focus on that when we talk about Ice Pirates
Yeah.
going forward.
Yeah.
The movie Clue is in 85, and I'm wondering what the budget of Clue is.
Oh, that's an interesting question.
$15 million to do Clue in 85.
Yeah. Right. On one set.
No World of Water.
Right. Right. So I do know that Ice Pirates features a lot of props and sets from Logan's Run from 1976 or 77. Um,
Sorry, I just
so,
looked up the budget for Waterworld.
oh God. Oh no.
$175 million. I knew that it was a
Wow.
boondoggle, and I knew that it was a big budget.
Yeah.
But like, I guess they had to make big giant fucking tanks. Still, the budget for
Yeah. And they
Titanic
were
is
like,
only $25 million more.
geez. Yeah. Well, that movie is famous in its own right.
A
Um,
$250 million.
yeah.
Sorry.
But yeah, so in addition to like the extremely limited budget, there was also apparently some new executive who was stealing money from the companies, and so it. Long story short, the director and co-writer just sighs when he talks about Ice Pirates as like this is what happens when everything goes wrong with the studio. So it's one does not expect it to be a masterpiece.
Who is the writer and director we are working with here? Do they wind up doing any? Is this a situation where, like, I didn't know George Miller directed Babe Pig in the City? You know?
Right. Right. So on the writing front, the interesting piece of trivia is that the co-writer Stanford Sherman also wrote Krull. So
Oh,
in the early '80s sci-fi lexicon, we're like sister film with Krull here.
I don't know if Krull holds up, but I do. I have nostalgia glasses for that.
So that's kind of where we are. Like memorable sci-fi movie from the early '80s that isn't necessarily good, but it's an absolute Saturday afternoon delight in the company of Beastmaster and Conan and stuff like that, right? Like that's kind of the genre. But Ice Pirates is real sci-fi. so we've got the Kroll pedigree, and then the director is this guy Stuart Raffel, who's a really interesting personality. He apparently got his start in show business as an animal wrangler. Um, he's English. He grew up on a farm, so he was always kind of good with animals.
Mm.
And he got into, like, he had a lion and a chimp, and like he personally owned back in the 70s when it wasn't controlled. He had these animals, and so he would provide the animals for like the Tarzan movies and TV shows kind of stuff, um, which gave him an opportunity to see a lot of what went on a set, and to watch directors work and watch productions happen. And then a lot of his early career was like, family in the wilderness kind of movies. He had this
Mm.
whole run of the Adventures of the Wilderness Family, Across the Great Divide, The Sea
Mm.
Gypsies. Later on
Can't
for
see that
Disney, he did
anymore.
The New Family Robinson. So his thing was like, family movies in against nature. Um, and he had built kind of a career about that. And it seems like a real wild pitch that he ended up on Ice Pirates. Like, that's not what he did.
Mhm.
um, and was just sort of brought in. But later he wrote Passenger 57, the Wesley Snipes thriller.
Oh yeah.
Um, so like he's a talented guy. He's got some chops. He's able to do some successful
Mhm.
work. So anyway, so it's co-written by Raffel and Sherman,
Mhm.
um, and they the cast that got put together is really kind of interesting. The lead is Robert Urich, who before this had been just like a character actor on TV. Like, he had been on Gunsmoke for one episode, and
Mhm.
Charlie's Angels, and a couple episodes of
Mhm.
Love Boat. Um, my sister, subsequent to this, was had a big crush on him for Spencer for Hire, where he was like, like a police procedural kind of show in the late 80s. He was on Lonesome Dove.
Mhm.
Um, so he's kind of like a Chin Brockworthy kind of, male lead, but nobody, no big ticket. Apparently, MGM had a contract with him to make a TV show, and instead they leveraged it to make him the lead in this movie.
Oh. So I'm
Mm.
hearing you talk about this actor and I don't know who they are and I don't think that I would recognize them. Do you think that I would recognize anyone in this movie? I didn't look anything up about this movie. I know nothing about this movie.
The supporting cast is where it gets really interesting, because uh, two of the kind of like crew members are Angelica Houston
Mhm.
and Ron Perlman.
What?
Yep. And another of the kind of supporting cast is John Matisak, who we know played Sloth in The Goonies the
Oh,
next year.
fuck. Oh, he dies very young, sadly. So this is his only other thing then.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, he was
Ah.
like a football player, right?
Mhm.
And he was kind of like, he was doing the thing that a lot of guys do, where they're trying to get into Hollywood as like a big, you know, bruiser kind of character. And he picked up a couple roles like that, and yeah.
Oh, that's kind of funny, like OJ and Naked Gun.
Yeah, that's another one, exactly.
Another one, yeah.
uh,
Or that guy in Blood of Heroes, the other American with the curly hair. I believe he might have been a football player. He was also the,
yeah, that
like,
makes
crazy guy in, Revenge of the Nerds.
Oh, right. Yeah, I
Yeah.
don't remember his name, but
Well, it'll be in
yeah,
the trivia for the end. So
there we go.
yeah, exactly. That's interesting. You go back to Ron Perlman, though. So I know that Ron Perlman's, like, one of his first roles is that cave movie where he doesn't even speak, and then there's, of
Yeah,
course, City of Lost Children, everything like that. Like, where in this timeline is this? Is his, like, 3rd or 4th
I
film?
think I think this is his second role.
Woo! So it's like the cave
Yeah,
movie and then this. They're letting him talk now. Fuck yeah.
right. He's got some
Mhm.
presence. And I don't know, like Angelica Houston obviously has pedigree from her father, but I
Mhm.
don't know that she had done a ton before
Mm.
this either.
Mhm.
Um, so it's sort of like the whole cast is kind of like people from soap operas or TV shows or like character
Mhm.
actors. Um, the John Carradine is one of the big roles, as in the father of
Oh,
David and Keith
yeah.
Carradine, but in like a really like he's the like emperor of the galaxy or some stupid thing. So it's like having Orson Welles be the voice of God or something. Like the
Mm.
older actor who lends credibility to a production, but is only there for like 1 or 2 days of shooting.
Oh, that's like Alice Cooper in that adaptation of Jesus Christ Superstar that we saw, where I was just like, "You're gonna tell me
Right.
that character has one song?" And you're like, "Yeah, I'm sorry, that's it." And I was so upset.
Right. But yeah, King Herod is the best role in that show. So
King George is the best in Hamilton.
yep,
Take.
there you go. Yep,
Okay, okay.
very good.
So, what is the plot without giving away maybe too much?
Well, yeah. So they're space pirates in a galaxy where uh, water is a precious commodity.
Mhm.
Um, so they're trying to steal water from like a government shipment kind of thing, like from it's like the rebels attacking the Empire kind of situation. Um,
Mhm.
but they get caught, and they split the party, and the main guys are uh, gonna get butchered essentially, or get turned into slaves for the Empire. And the princess, for some reason, sort of takes a cotton to them and like rescues them as her personal uh, servants or whatever, because her father may have found a planet with unlimited water, and she thinks that they can help her find him and this planet, and save him and save the galaxy. So she realizes that she can use these pirates to do some extrajudicial adventuring, and the plot unfolds from there.
So, I have one bifurcating question, which is,
Okay.
why isn't it called Space Pirates? And is that because all of the water that they're trying to go after is ice because 'cause they're in space?
I mean, yeah, it was. I think it was called like Water Planet or something. Um, Space Pirates might have been too on the nose.
Okay.
Like that's almost a whole genre, right? Like
Mhm.
you know, Captain Harlock and Han Solo and
Mhm.
Mal Reynolds and
Firefly.
Firefly. Like
Yeah.
bingo. They're like space pirates. Kind of Cowboy Bebop, right? They're kind of space pirates.
They're
So
space mercenaries. Yeah, it's kind of a little bit of space for
yeah,
hire,
yeah,
yeah.
right, right. So um, and
Space cow.
pirates in general is like one of the archetypical story things, and I guess this was kind of intended to hearken to the like the Errol Flynn
Mm.
Seahawk kind of piracy vibe, like the golden days of Hollywood kind of pirate
Oh, like a
movies.
Porco
uh,
Rosso?
yeah, a little bit of that vibe, I think. So let's do a pirate picture, but we'll do it in space.
That jives with the time period.
Exactly. Like we've just had all the success of Star Wars, and also in '84, Star Trek III: The Search for Spock came out. So there was, big space franchises are, and also Dune and stuff. Like there was, I think space is kind of always a genre, but there, things go in waves where they try to capitalize on those successful franchises.
Yeah, and you had mentioned Spaceballs as well when we were talking about this, which comes out 3 years after this movie. And I'm curious if there's like, oh, I wonder if Spaceballs looked at this movie to maybe pull some stuff out of.
Right. Yeah, I think Spaceballs was more directly a spoof of Star Wars. And
Clearly, yeah.
supposedly, right. And supposedly the filmmakers on Ice Pirates intentionally didn't watch Star Wars in order not to be overly influenced.
So this is 84. What year did Star Wars come out?
The original, I think, was 78. Return of the Jedi came out in 83.
That's
So it was like 78, 81, 83.
That's impressive. Like, you have to really be
I
avoiding
know,
it.
like,
Like, you didn't know you were going to work on Ice Pirates in 84. How'd you miss this?
yeah, I'm not sure I believe that they never saw it.
Hmm.
Maybe they didn't study it. um, so yeah, I think it's an intersection between, and again, like from what I remember, I think Ice Pirates is an intersection between the sci-fi space genre that was kind of popular, and then the kind of sexy slapstick movies like Porky's and Meatballs and
Revenge of the Nerds.
Police Academy came out this year, and the kind of kind of a little bit raunchy, not over, not like offensively sexual, but definitely kind of a lot of big boobies and castration jokes and fart jokes and stuff.
Hmm.
Like Revenge of the Nerds, again, also in that
Yeah,
kind of
that's what I was
category.
thinking of. Yeah.
So, and again, like it wasn't originally intended as a comedy, but they had to rewrite it for the limited budget more as
Hmm.
a jokey thing. So
That's
I think
crazy.
they were trying. I think they ended up going for a lot of cheap laughs as opposed to high concept sci-fi.
That's funny. I wonder if the original script exists in any way still. And like, they're constantly remaking movies. Why not finally give the original script the budget it needs and make the original Ice Pirates? I mean, I've told a
Right,
couple people that we're going to do this, and I have not hit a single person who has heard of this movie. And it's not that old. Like, it's
right.
84. But like, even Brett was like, I don't know what you're talking about. I didn't ask Conan yet, but I do get the feeling that this would be under the category of like movies he's probably not seen because it's too weird. Not that he doesn't like a good
Yeah,
weird movie, but yeah,
yeah,
I can't think of anyone. It's almost like it's your fever dream where like until we watch this movie, it doesn't actually exist for any other human being.
I know, right? And honestly, I could be doing a Ben and like completely
Mhm.
remembering only you know nostalgic stuff. And again, I'm not promising it's great.
No.
Like I think it's a Saturday afternoon
Mhm.
romp.
I think it's funny that you mentioned that because the episode that we started with, where you came on and we did episode 1, and it was let's talk about how we don't really like Mike Myers. I had
Hmm.
not seen So I Married an Axe Murderer since I was like 14, and I had like a nostalgia for I like it. And we went
Yeah,
to watch it again, and I had that like whole fear where we're talking about it. I'm trying to hype it up, and I'm like, I don't know though. Is it still gonna be any good? And watching it, there were parts that didn't totally hold up, but much like So I Married an Axe Murderer episode, I think this might be the only podcast to talk about ice pirates. So we're doing a service whether or
yeah,
not we like it to just have the audience get to this is the only people jiving on this at all.
right,
Yeah.
right. Yeah, and yeah, it is esoteric. I mean, yeah, like some of my favorite movies are those cult classics, and I would actually compare this a lot to Johnny Dangerously,
Oh, I
which
really
is
do
I
love that
think
movie.
a hilarious movie
Do love that.
with Michael Keaton and Marilu Henner and Joe Piscopo, like a pretty star-studded cast that nobody has seen, like nobody under 50 has seen.
Just all the good people have. That's how you know who they are. That was how God turned their ankles. Um, I think that that's such a great example of Michael Keaton's incredible depth. People think of him as like, oh, he's such a good dramatic actor. And you're like, no, no, no. He's an amazing comedic actor who does very good
Mhm.
dramatic as well. But his ability to combine the two flawlessly, like I think Birdman is a good
Right.
example of that. It's just
Right.
he does not get enough credit, in my opinion.
Yeah. I think so many actors have to start in comedy before they have an opportunity to do any dramatic acting. And so we think of them as comedians and then find out how much depth they have, like Jim Carrey, like Ben Stiller, like,
Robin
even,
Williams.
yeah, right, for sure. Because Michael Keaton in the early 80s was doing Mr. Mom and Gung Ho, and
I love
like
Gung Ho.
he was, yeah, I know, right? That's a deep cut.
It's a good one.
Um, so he was doing, pretty fluffy comic roles,
Kind of like Tom
but
Hanks at the
then,
time.
yeah, oh, for sure, Tom Hanks. Oh my God, right? Like Bosom
Mhm.
Buddies and Dragnet and all the dumb stuff. Actually, Bachelor Party came out this same year in
Oh,
'84, and Splash.
84.
So
Jesus.
Tom Hanks was double dipping, where he did Splash with Daryl Hannah as like, the kind of guy he would play in Big and other movies, and then Bachelor Party, which is prurient,
Yeah.
has Nick the Dick Thud.
Zip
um,
Bud.
yeah, so, and one of my all-time favorite comedies is Dragnet with Tom Hanks and
Yeah.
Dan Aykroyd,
Yes.
and he like sort of disavows that movie, but I think it was tremendously hilarious.
Highly
And
quotable.
Turner and Hooch, yeah, yeah.
Mm.
So yeah, that's that's where I think we are with with Ice Pirates, and we'll find out.
I wanted to go back to a thought that you had talked about with Ben recommending movies because we had just talked in the Lord of the Rings episode with JR about the concept of like how to approach getting somebody to watch a movie that you like, whether or not you have huge
Mhm.
reverence and you've seen it all the time, or you just like you want to hype people up. And there's the fear, as with what happened with JR, where you become so aggressive about the fact that they haven't seen it and it's so awesome that you turn them off. But there is the other kind of side of it where you get so hyped on it, but you've hyped yourself up as well. So like you're lying to both people in the relationship.
Right, right, but yeah. I think that's a danger, but I also think it is almost uh, equally problematic if you prevaricate and hedge and say, well, but it might not be that good, like
Mm,
you end up undermining the whole production, and then the person's like, I don't know, geez, is this gonna really suck? Like, what am I in for here?
no.
So I think you just have to say, like, whatever, I like this movie, or I remember thinking this was funny when I was a kid.
Mhm,
I don't know how great it is, but I'm just eager to revisit it. Or
mhm.
I think this was pretty funny. You might like it. I have a really horrible memory of showing a high school girlfriend Highlander and feeling so embarrassed
Oh,
the whole time
it's
because
such a
I
dumb
thought she
movie.
hated it. Well, it's it is what it is. It's a very very iconic but flawed movie. I loved JR's emphasis on
Yes.
enjoying things that aren't perfect, right? Like
Mhm,
nobody is asking this to be a masterpiece, but we can still love it for what it is. And that's surely where I am with Highlander.
mhm.
But, I was trying way too hard to impress a girl, and the first girl I ever dated, more or less. So like I was I wanted to share with her something I thought was great, and then I immediately regretted it because I thought she hated every second of it.
Ah,
So so that's kind of the whole kernel of this podcast project is like, well, what if they don't like it?
that's for both
um,
people, not just you. It's me too.
right, right, right. Yeah. So, and the answer is like, meh. It's probably okay. People's lives will go on.
Yeah, the world
But
continues
what if you
to
do
go.
like it? That's the inverse is implied, or the converse, or whatever, is implied by the question.
Hmm.
Like, yeah, but maybe you will like it. So
And then maybe in finding out why you don't like it, you may better understand things that you do.
for sure, for sure.
Yeah.
And I think uh, again, thinking of the Lord of the Rings fandom and various other things, like maybe you're taking this too seriously.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like maybe you could just enjoy it for a funny sci-fi movie instead of like, oh, the mise en scène was completely insufficient, and obviously these actors hadn't studied with whoever.
Yes, with a true elven linguist. Wait,
Right.
I think my roommate in college was an elven linguist. Uh, I am trying to hold on to the thought.
That's
I
good
am
stuff.
shaking my head because I know full well that I am only not as insufferable as all of those people because they have not yet made a Dark Souls movie or a Bloodborne
Oh,
movie.
well, they're
But bless,
right.
if they ever put as much energy as they did into the Lord of the Rings movie into any level of From Software movie, you will lose me.
Mhm.
You will lose me to it, and I will be the most insufferable human being in the world. I will only ever want to talk about that. So, there but for the grace of God, go us all. But yeah, you can't make it your life.
Right. I think filmmaking and adaptations have. I think that's a thing about Peter Jackson that changed the game.
Mhm.
And then Game of Thrones and stuff, like when you think about, as like fantasy movies or novel adaptations or whatever in the 70s and 80s and even the 90s, like they usually weren't good. The like old
Mhm.
D&D movie was an embarrassment, and uh even like Total Recall just didn't give a shit about the source material. They changed 90% of it, and at least they didn't call it "We Can Remember It For You" wholesale. But it's I think the filmmaking world has changed over our lifetimes to be a lot more loyal to the source material and to the fandom, and like the
Mhm.
Wheel of Time series that was out
Mhm.
recently, which you and I didn't love, but I think it was incredibly loyal to the magic system and the
Mhm.
characters, and I'm sure fans I'm sure have beef with it, that changes they made, but
I didn't
um
read the original series, so I didn't quite have that, like,
yeah.
thing that I think a lot of people brought to it, but I think you could even see that in Scanner Darkly from The Distance of
Mhm.
Scanner Darkly from Total Recall. Again, another Philip K.
Right.
Dick book where suddenly you get the, like, full breadth of the original source material's message as opposed to, like, "Isn't this kinda cool?"
Yeah, yeah, right,
Yeah.
right. Like, well, we can just hack this IP and make our own movie
Mhm.
out of it. Although it's interesting to think about David Lynch's Dune in '84
Mm.
compared to Villeneuve's current Dune productions. Um, but David Lynch is fucking crazy, so.
You told me today a wonderful fact about David Lynch and Martin Scorsese.
Oh no, it was Mel Brooks that we
Oh,
were having that
sorry,
conversation
I was thinking
because.
Scorsese, Ari Aster, and that was the conversation that we were having, yes.
Right. Yeah, that was the transition. But on The Elephant Man, which Mel Brooks was producing, and of course David Lynch directed with Sir John Hurt in the title role.
Mhm.
And there's this famous quote that gets sent around a lot about uh, they screened it for the studio executives who had a bunch of suggestions for changes to the film. And Mel Brooks said, "We are engaged together in a business venture. We have screened this movie for you to update you on the status of that venture. Do not imagine that we are soliciting the input of simians." Like he had some cutting line for like brain dead monkeys, basically.
Oh,
Like,
good.
oh shit.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's good shit.
Apparently he had a dim view of the money guys.
Yeah, well, I mean, especially when you're talking about Lynch work, because I think about Dune as we're talking about it here as being like,
Right.
I mean, everybody wants to say the new Dune is much better than the David Lynch Dune, and I think the new Dune had none of the restrictions that the David Lynch Dune had. Lynch had
Totally.
great ideas and great expectations and was hobbled at every moment. And then, Villeneuve was given a lot of assistance and made it in a time period where it wasn't so hard,
Yeah.
which is not to
Right. Yeah.
undercut what
Just
he did.
technological limitations.
Yeah.
Uh, but there are things that I think Lynch did better, like the guild travelers in those crazy train car things were so awesome, and the representation of the shields and the slow blade penetrates the shield, like even as corny as it looked with that like planar animation,
Mhm.
you could tell there was a shield on, and when the blade met it, I thought those were well done.
Yeah, I think my biggest complaint is the lack of those chain things.
Yeah.
I thought those
Yeah.
were so well done, especially in that time period. They could have only been done better. But it's a small thing to get really, really stuck on.
Sure.
I
Yeah.
want a tangent for a hard moment here because we did have you on episode 1, and that was
Mhm.
before we started doing the Letterboxd top 4.
Oh, sure.
And I wanted to give you a chance to give us your top 4 so that the viewers so that the audience can get to know you a little bit better as a film goer and kind of understand what are things that you like.
I'm not on Letterbox, but I put a little thought into the list.
Mhm.
Um, I think I think the first couple are pretty easy. I'm currently wearing the tank top from Big Trouble in Little China, so that's on the list.
Absolutely,
um,
absolutely.
and it's John Carpenter.
Mhm.
It's a hilarious anti-hero, and a kind of fantastical story.
Non-white
Um,
savior.
for sure, right,
Like,
right.
he
Yeah,
he comes in and you're like, "What's this white savior?" Like, he does not save anybody.
he's the white buffoon who gets saved by Wang, and it uh, sort of hand in hand with that. I think Buckaroo Bonzai
Yeah.
is certainly on my list, and again, just like it's a fantastical, fabulous story, as in a fable, um, with with characters who are not the sort of stereotypes, not archetypical heroes and villains, and just a healthy dose of whimsy. Um, so those two are at or near the top.
Mhm.
Um, I think Big Lebowski is also one, and I'm a big Coen Brothers fan in general. Um,
Yeah.
I would be tempted to put Miller's Crossing instead of Big Lebowski, just because I love the
Mhm.
feel and the look of that film, like just the warm
It's so
rooms, and
rich.
and Gabriel Byrne's laconic kind of anti-hero character.
Mm.
But I Big Lebowski is just more fun. It's
Yeah.
just more quotable, more hilarious characters, and so I think it edges. Um, and then I think number 4 is The Fisher King from
Oh,
Terry Gilliam,
yeah.
with Jeff Bridges and Robin Williams.
Yeah.
Um, that in high school, that was the first movie where I got the symbolism. Where, like, I don't think of myself as a very like subtle literary analyst or anything, or film analyst, but it was like, oh, the holy grail is like being kind to another person, and Jack had to learn from Perry, who's sort of like Percival, like, and the Red
Mhm.
Knight is like his trauma oh, wow, man, I get it. So it's like exactly the level of like hit you over the head metaphor that I was able to absorb and find like really, really enriching. But also just fucking amazing performances from Mercedes Rule and Amanda Plummer, as well as Robin Williams and Jeff Bridges. Like, fucking everybody in that movie is fantastic, and it's the sweet spot for Gilliam's like
Mm-hmm.
manic whimsy, but big heartedness. Um, I think Baron Munchausen is another great contender
Mm-hmm.
from him. Um,
I think that Fisher King
so
is probably the most accessible. It exists in a like
yeah,
fantasy world, but clearly the fantasy world is part of the trauma that's imagined by the one particular character. And then other characters are large and like colorful, but it's not quite
right,
like Brazil where people are some people really cannot handle that level of surrealism and they just don't want to engage in
right.
the story. Whereas I feel like Fisher King is it's pretty like you can sit almost anyone down and be like, just watch it. It's a little weird, but
Yeah,
it's not that. It's not Terry Gilliam weird.
right, right, right.
Uh, didn't
I
Mercedes
think that's fair.
Rule nominated or get an Oscar for that?
I believe she won Best
Yeah,
Supporting Actress
yeah,
for the role. Yeah,
good movie.
yeah. So that's one folks should have on their list for sure.
Absolutely, and I think an overlooked and easily missed one too. So that's a great choice. Although I'm the same with
Yeah,
you, I do have Big Lebowski on my top four. Although every once in a while I think about switching it out with Raising Arizona. So I do know the like,
right.
oh, I have but two Cohen loves.
Yeah, yeah. I almost tend to think more in terms of favorite directors than favorite movies because
Hmm.
it's easier to say, well, Gilliam and Coen Brothers and Ridley Scott, and
Hmm.
like you hit me with anything from those guys, I'm going to enjoy it.
Hmm.
So,
Nice.
um, oh shit, Real Genius. Oh my God, where does Real
Oh no!
Genius
You can
fit
put
on
it
the
in number
list?
five. You got to put it in number five.
Yeah,
Honorable
yeah, there's
mention
going
at
to
the
have to
very,
be.
very least, because that is a highly rewatched film. I recently even found myself going, I'm hyper frenetic and I never sleep.
Yeah, exactly.
I knit you this sweater.
Yeah, super quotable. Um, yeah, I uh, I think there are themes in common with a lot of my favorites, which are big-hearted and a little fantastical and very quotable.
Yeah, yeah. And you are I think incredibly gifted with remembering lines from things and songs, having maybe seen it or heard it
Mhm.
twice. So like not only that, you're very good at getting the voices of certain characters. So you get the character lines perfectly well, and then you do the impression well. And when you have those together, it really becomes quite eerie and effective. Like we just
Nice.
watched this movie.
Well,
What
it
the fuck are you doing?
right. Well, it's how I hear it in my head,
Mm,
and I just do my best to like hit play on the tape and make
mhm.
the sound come out.
Yeah, well, it's almost like you have a photographic memory for dialogue.
Yeah, yeah,
It's too bad you don't want to act because that's like the dream.
right. Well, I would need someone else to have performed it, and then I could imitate them performing it.
Oh, it's like a Cyrano de Bergerac. That's don't. I'm cutting that out. We're gonna make that movie.
Nice.
The new
Okay.
update. It's the Bridget Jones's
Yep.
Diary of.
It's not bad. That's not bad.
It's not bad. It's got legs. Probably take like 10 minutes to write because somebody already wrote the whole thing for us. We're just tricking you.
There you go. Right.
Ah. All right.
Yeah.
So as we approach the end of the part one, before we've seen the movie, there is the
Mhm.
like, and I guess I could ask this of both of us because you're a little unsure of the movie. What is
Well, no,
something?
I think you have to address these two questions
Yeah.
this time.
Yeah. What is something that
What are
you?
you looking forward to,
Yeah.
and what are you, kind of afraid might crop up that you would just as soon not encounter?
So, like I'm a little bit afraid that I will be very, very aware of the fact that it cost $8 million to make. But at the same time, I'm also really, really excited that I'll be aware of the fact that it cost $8 million to make. And I'll either constantly be like, damn, look at that shit. Or like, well, it's a bucket. I guess I have to look up how much 1971 Disney Black Hole cost because I still like we went into that
Mm,
being like, I don't know, Katie, I don't know. And like I like that movie a lot more than I was ready to like that movie. I know Ernest Borgnine is just wearing the pants he probably arrived in, and that was great for costuming. The
penny loafers.
penny loafers. The robots are like floating trash cans on string, and there's a moment where I'm not like, I'm into this. I'm
Yeah,
suspended my belief. I'm ready. Watch out for the weird German guy at the end.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. I don't think. I mean, clearly, based on Waterworld, money does not make a good story or a good movie.
Yes.
I think there have been some spectacular low budget movies and some abysmal large budget movies. Um, and one of our shared favorite things about Ridley Scott's first film, The Duelist, is how resourceful he was with very, very limited resources, and
Absolutely.
some of that kind of stuff makes for great filmmaking and
Mhm.
storytelling. And it's almost like sort of using the cleverness of the theater to create, to bring the audience into the magic,
Mhm.
without just having a ton of money to dump on the problem.
Absolutely. Yeah, I guess another one of my fears is that I'm afraid it will be worse than Waterworld.
Yeah, well, we're gonna find out.
Ah, that's yeah, a lot of times you'll watch a movie and it'll be like specifically the found footage genre. It'll just be like, God, the camera work is shit. The story is garbage. You're just doing this because you can, because it only costs $10,000 to make a movie like this. But then you have the movies like I really thought Lake Mungo was a wonderful example of found footage that was purposefully leaning into the lower budget, lower reasons. Like it's a very thin line to walk, but I also feel like a movie from '84 might still be able to do it. It's harder to do nowadays.
Right, right.
Yeah.
I think the foremost thing that I am afraid about is, um, that the humor will be racist or homophobic or sexist in a way that really kind of ruins the fun. And
Mm,
I think the his co-pilot is a black guy, and I
mhm,
think some of that is played for comedy, but
mhm,
it's I I don't remember any of that, but I might have glossed over it or whatever.
mhm,
So, um, I and some of the humor is definitely like, you know I know there's a thing about castration, and like,
mhm.
so some of it is. I believe I saw on IMDb in the cast there is a pimp robot, which is kind of hilarious, but also probably kind of offensive.
I
Um,
I do know that probably I think that works well into the late '90s because I'm pretty sure Conan O'Brien late night had a character called Pimpbot.
oh, nice! Wow, wow. What if it is a reference to ice pirates?
Then I have loved
That
ice pirates for longer than I have known.
See, well, there you have it.
Does it have Abe Vigoda on an ice toilet too? Because I'm still trying to figure that one out.
And the threads are all coming together. Ice
Yeah,
and pimp bots, and yeah, here we
that's
are.
why it's ice pirates. So
I mean, yeah,
I wouldn't feel too bad because when we watched So I Married an Axe Murderer, that happened. There are a couple of moments where I was like, that is not. I really hate that got said there. And it wasn't enough to make the whole movie terrible, but there was definitely a
sure,
like, God, I can see why I forgot about that.
right, right,
Yeah.
yeah, and I think that's inevitable watching
Mhm.
stuff from back when.
Mhm. All right. Well, anything you want to say before we go and watch the movie?
I think we've covered a lot of the bases. I'm cautiously optimistic.
Is there any like one weird fact that we should look for, like in the rotoscoped Hobbit? The guy trips over his own sword and keeps. They just animated it, and he just keeps going. They just animated it.
Right. Um, I wouldn't be surprised if there's a whole ton of that, but
Okay.
nothing that I came across in the trivia.
Okay.
So, yeah, we'll keep our eyes peeled for
All
this highfalutin production.
right. See what is to see. All right. Well,
Yeah,
I'm excited. I mean, even at $8 million, that's like you do the math. The girl in the basement cost $3,000. How much more money did?
yep, Yeah,
So,
even with sets recycled from prior sci-fi films and
mhm.
relatively unknown actors who would later become noteworthy.
Yes.
Yeah,
All right.
we'll find out.
All right. See you guys on the other side.
Power off and C-section, sir.
Check it on the auxiliary system.
It's a negative.
Nobody move. Hands on your heads.
Get him up.
Warriors, tell them to stop. Call them off or I'll kill you. I mean it. Cease. Very funny.
We are back, having watched Ice Pirates. I will admit this is the longest period between watching and talking about it for anything recently, and usually when I don't entirely like something, sitting on it makes it like get a little bit better. Although I think I may have enjoyed it a little bit more immediately.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you certainly don't need any time to process the intricacies.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say, I wouldn't say that I hated it or I squirmed through the entire experience. I don't want to give that impression, but it
No.
doesn't stick with you.
Yeah, it's true. Um, and a lot of folks seem to kind of categorize it as like fun schlock Saturday afternoon matinee.
Mhm.
Kind of
Mhm.
it's on cable or whatever, and so
Mhm.
you sit there. And I think that's very fair. Like it's it's not good, but it has some charming bits. Um, I kind of think my long distance take is that it was a doomed production because like they had studio heads changing and it was supposed to be like a real sci-fi thing, and then it kind of got sabotaged, and so they were like, well, what if we just made it funny and took a hard left and tried to just stick jokes in, and it didn't often work. um,
Mhm.
so it was kind of the worst of both worlds. It wasn't a good sci-fi like adventure movie, and it wasn't a good comedy because it was like the comedy was an afterthought in a lot of ways.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
so it didn't really have a chance to be super successful. That said,
Mm.
I thought some of the supporting cast were actually really hilarious.
Oh yeah, before we go into the to that, I would like to still take apart what you were just saying with
Hmm.
regards to I think this happens a lot in horror, and I think that this happens a lot when we're talking about a $12 million cut. This was a $20 million production when originally written and set out, and it gets cut to 8 million, and now they had to make a movie out of it. If you have a horror movie, and I think you see this a lot at the independent level, you can't afford the special effects that you want, and so you're like, oh no, we'll say that it's supposed to be tongue in cheek. We'll say that it's supposed to be campy.
Right.
And I think in the place where campy and comedy exist, there can be really good work. Like absolutely if you look at early Pete Jackson, Evil Dead,
Hmm.
or Sam Raimi, sometimes, not always for me, camp is really hard because you're right. Like if you put comedy where it was not intended by people who are not very well versed in comedy, like, how would that work? It is so belittling to both the genre of sci-fi and then also comedy, right?
Right. Right. Like Tucker and Dale versus Evil is a brilliant comedy, and it's kind
Mhm.
of a send up of the genre, and it's written that way.
Mhm.
So if you mean for it to be comedy, it can be really successful. But like when it just, looks like your special effects don't come off, that's not comedy. That's like cheese.
Yeah, they tried to fix it in post with the script. We're like, "Oh, we already gonna try and shoot this, so let's just try and fix the script by making it funny when we can't afford stuff." That's such a strange thing to do. I can't off the top of my head think of anything else that has ever happened to be like, well, it worked well. Like, has it ever worked well?
I know, right? Yeah, it kind of makes me think that, like, it makes me think about the people whose day job is making movies. Like, this was nobody's dream picture. This was nobody's, like, the screenplay that they wrote in college that they were dying to get produced. But, like, these people had a job to put out a movie and make it as successful as it possibly could be, given all the chaos that was going on at their company.
Mhm.
And they did an okay job, and they sent it to the printers, and, like, I doubt anybody's super proud of it, but it got out there. They sold some tickets. That it's like the
Mhm.
sausage got made.
Yes, and for the lead actor who was promised quite an amazing role in his contracts leading up to this, like, it can really be a double hurt. Like, I turned down other better things to try and get my Star Wars, and this is my Star Wars.
Yeah.
But, at the same time, I have absolutely seen worse movies.
Oh, for sure.
100% seen worse movies, and, I think there's a fantastic Patton Oswalt bit about the couch that ate people, I believe is the name of the movie, or maybe The Couch That Ate Me, whereas, like,
Uh-huh.
paraphrasing, he sees this movie and he realizes that, like, people spent months of their lives worrying about getting this film done, put all of their energy into making this film, and, like, it's fucking hard to make a movie, so you do have to stop back and step back and give credit where credit is due. There were aspects of this that were doomed from the start. Absolutely. And
Yeah.
once you step past that, you can find the gems that are worth enjoying. Although I will admit that every time you had mentioned this in the past, I kept thinking you were talking about the, like, 2000s most expensive pornography ever made, pirate. Maybe just the
Pirate.
word pirates,
Yeah.
which is funny because, like, I'm gonna Google it right now, the budget of that particular pornography. How much do you wanna bet is how much more it was than this movie?
I hope it was more. It produced more entertainment for more people.
I don't wanna have too much typing in the background.
Right.
Wow! I guess I really don't have any kind of depth for how much it costs to make a pornography. Make
No.
a Unit 1 pornography, because
Yeah.
the answer to the question is it was It was $1,000,000. It was 8 times more expensive to make ice pirates than just pirates.
Yeah.
The sets,
I
it's definitely the sets.
right. And I don't know who the actors were in Pirates, but even, Robert Urich had a pretty good contract, so
Mhm, mhm.
I bet he probably made the whole budget of Pirates for his starring role in Ice Pirates.
I know, and in fairness, Pirates, the porn, I believe, is from, 2005, so there's almost a
Oh God,
20-year
yeah,
difference
that's true.
between the
Right,
2.
right, a generation worth of inflation too.
Yeah, so
Um,
so, if you don't have that much money to make your movie, instead of making it a comedy, make it a porno.
there you go. That would have been a smart pivot. Um,
Uh,
yeah,
but
no,
the
I
only
think
thing. Mhm.
I was going to say I think Ice Pirates is actually more entertaining than some of the, like, intentional fantasy movies, like, serious, taking themselves seriously, fantasy movies of the '80s. Like,
Mhm. Mhm.
um, there are a couple that I, like, had always heard about and never seen. I think Deathstalker is one of them, and I finally saw
Ooh.
it, and I was embarrassed for the people involved. Like, the sets were obviously foam, and
Uh-huh.
the acting was like, it was just painful. So
Mhm.
like you said, I didn't hate Ice Pirates. I wasn't squirming,
Mhm.
mostly, sometimes a little bit, but
Yeah. I just watched, Phenomena, which is Dario Argenti and has Jennifer Connelly in her second role, and, like, I
mm,
squirmed the fucking hell out of it. I had to, like, look away, be watching, doing something else on my phone. I'm crocheting while And I
Yeah.
almost really wanted you to watch that with me because I was like, "Oh shit, Iron Maiden's on the soundtrack. It's gonna be so cool!" And like, I played that one scene for
And you
you.
showed me, a clip, and it had nothing to do with what was going on, and it was almost like someone else in the room wouldn't turn off their stereo. Like, what?
Yeah,
this
yeah.
isn't part of the same piece of media,
So I almost got excited to show you something that would have been way worse than Ice Pirates, and has way more clout because it's Argento. So
right?
you gotta. I do appreciate that at least Ice Pirates wasn't trying to fart in a jar and make me smell it. Like it just was trying to make a movie.
And like, I think it's worth pouring one out for all of the movies that we thought were great when we were kids, and then we see as adults and are just like,
Mhm.
oh my god, I massively inflated parts of this and completely glossed over other parts, and my taste has changed completely, and I can't believe I ever liked this. But
Yes.
worst case, I showed it to a whole room full of my friends, and now they all hate me.
Yeah. Completely forgot how whiny the nonverbal child in Six String Samurai was, and I got super hyped
Oh,
to show this to everyone, forgetting that that's really 80% of this movie.
yeah, yep. Yeah, there. Everybody has probably had that painful experience, so we can all empathize with.
We almost traumatized that. Well, I want to say Ben's girlfriend, but a friend of ours was brought
Oh, right,
brought someone home from New York for such a confusing
coworker.
series of like unfortunate misunderstandings that led to that poor woman sitting in our house having to watch Roadside Prophets and really hating it.
Yeah, although I will assert that that was on her, because Roadside Prophets actually is a delight,
It
um,
is. Yes.
and it's like it actually is smart and was written and didn't get changed into a comedy halfway through the production.
No,
So
it's just the absolute wrong way to watch a great movie.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I think expectation matters a lot, and I think audience matters a lot, because
Mhm,
folks can have a lot of fun with a mediocre movie, or
mhm,
folks can have no fun at all with a halfway decent movie because they want it to be something other than what it is or whatever.
mhm,
So,
mhm.
or like, certain friends girlfriend could completely ruin my experience watching Last of the Mohicans by just bitching the whole time about what is actually a pretty great movie made by Michael Mann with Daniel Day-Lewis. So get the fuck off my ass.
I'm just saying, my
For
grandfather is
example.
rolling in his grave. If you talk bad during, first of all, talking during that movie, cut that child's tongue out.
Yeah. There isn't even
Yeah.
that much dialogue. Just shut the fuck up and listen to the great soundtrack.
I mean, it's no Heathers, so
Well, yeah. Right. And Valley Girl was one of her gold standards. So anyway,
it's subjective,
sci-fi.
and that's the thing about
Right.
everything with film. And then especially when you start to get into genre specific stuff like horror or comedy. And I think it's so funny how people don't think of horror and comedy as so very much the same child. It's like that photo that you showed me of the two women in the car where one is wearing all black and the other one's wearing all rainbow. They're the same. They're best friends.
Right. Yep.
I was gonna say horror is just as subjective as comedy. I was just trying to watch religious horror and like I don't like it. It's not for me. There's no version of this, even at its height, that is really kind of speaking to me. I prefer a doppelganger possession than to a religious possession. I just feel like, oh, the church doesn't know how to get people back in their seats, so they decide to birth the next antichrist. Or, like bingo, pancake Saturday. Like try a couple of other things first.
Seriously, like pair up with Habitat for Humanity, like Jimmy Carter. People will fucking come out of the woodwork.
Fuck's sake, Christ.
Yeah, yeah, it's true. And like in comedy, like the whole uh, Porky's through American Pie, like sort of
Mm,
smutty comedy, just doesn't
mhm,
work for me. I don't think that's like I don't like it. I find it disrespectful. So those
mhm.
were big popular movies, and that people think they're hilarious, and I just like sit there and I don't laugh. So
Yeah. I feel that way about the
uh,
National Lampoon ones as well, because so much of the comedy is at the cost of something or someone else. and I
Right.
don't
Well,
I
God,
I
yeah,
don't
like
care
The
for that.
Office, especially the English Office is just,
Mhm.
squirming.
Mhm. Not yeah, and of course not all of it, but so much of it is that it's hard to step back out of that, and enjoy anything else, which is not entirely true of Ice Pirates. Like, there wasn't very much dated comedy. Like, when I think of Porky's and I think of Revenge of the Nerds, which was a film that I watched a lot when I was younger and was kinda like, "Yeah, I'm a nerd. I like Revenge of the Nerds." Although as a woman, you don't have to get too much older to suddenly be like, "Wait, he didn't that's not she's not consent." Oh.
Yep.
So
Right.
those movies definitely don't age very well, but I don't find that Ice Pirates had very much of that.
Yeah, and I mean, to their credit, like the exploitation was of the male characters when they were going to be castrated
Mhm.
and made into servants. So, like,
Mhm.
all right, I'll give you credit for kind of flipping the script a little bit. And the
Absolutely.
the pimp robot was actually hilarious. Like that was one of the times I actually laughed out loud. Um, so,
And but Pimp Robot is my favorite trivia. I do remember this now. The man
yeah.
who voices the Pimp Bot in this film goes on to be the voice of Audrey 2 in the first ever
Oh,
Alan Menken adaptation of Little Shop of Horrors.
that's a good voice.
Yeah,
That's an
he
amazing
he
voice. Wow.
he makes what so anyone going on and doing Audrey 2 is the plant, is doing an
Right.
impersonation of his version of it, because there's a version that predates Alan Menken that isn't a musical, that isn't what you think of when you think of Little Shop of Horror, but technically
Mm.
Little Shop of Horror is a remake of an existent play.
Huh.
So,
Okay.
like, wow, Pimpbot is on screen for, like, a minute, maybe less than a minute,
Yeah.
and,
Right.
like, the rabbit hole we fell down because of that is
Yeah.
superb. So hyped about that particular character. The name eludes me and will be in the, like, omissions part of this show. I will tell you their name.
Yeah. Legit.
So that was cool. That was very,
Yeah.
very cool, and I also really enjoyed you were saying this earlier, some of the lesser characters.
Right. I think. I mean, it's no surprise, but Angelica Houston, just with her eyes and like facial expression in the background of a scene, stole the
Mhm.
fucking show. Like,
Mhm.
just incredibly hilarious.
Yes.
She
Absolutely.
she rocked it, and her kind of like buddy cop movie with Ron Perlman as the sidekicks, like they were super charming and great, and had like it should have been their story, not the leads.
Oh, yeah, and
Um,
her, like, weird interaction, maybe love affair with the John
not as that,
Matsukas
yeah,
character? Yeah.
yeah,
The,
and he
guy from
actually I
Goonies.
think was consistently one of the
Fantastic.
funniest parts, like being the
Easily.
you know monk or whatever to escape castration, and like and to to spare himself from the Templars. Like it's a real tragedy that we lost him so young, because
Yeah.
I think he had great comedic instincts and great charisma.
Yeah, it
Um,
was like a John Cena kinda situation where you were really
hey,
watching someone who is a much more talented actor than an athlete, but also very talented as an athlete, but, like, this is what they should be doing.
right? Yeah, yeah, yep. Not just a dumb jock football player, but actually really, really charming and witty.
Yeah, they wanted
Yeah,
OJ to have that, and I never really got that feeling off of OJ.
yeah. No, I'm thinking about him in Naked Gun, but it wasn't really there.
Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, another great
Hmm.
crossover. I mean, the greatest of all time.
Yes, all-time great superstar,
Um,
um,
it's right there
and
in the
a
name.
delightful pilot in Airplane. So
Mhm,
I
that's
mean,
what I was thinking of. That's exactly what I was
right,
thinking Bruce Lee, obviously, and then also and yeah.
yeah, but the Zucker brothers made that's the kind of comedy that I love from the '80s is like
Mhm.
Airplane and Top Secret and all the like zany, silly shit that they did. Um, really worked for me. So
And ages
I guess
well.
it's true, yeah, and most of it isn't. If it's taking it, like if it's taking a shot at anybody, it's sort of like at the Hare Krishna or, but
I was gonna say, often obtuse or more situational or like
Right.
reflective
Right.
than it is making fun of a person or a thing. It's, it's the
Yeah.
way that it was said, not what was said, and I find that super funny. I wish that Ice
There's an
Pirates had
important
done
message
more
from
of it.
headquarters. Headquarters, what's that? Well, that's the big building where all the generals are, but that's not what's important right now.
Mhm. 100%, exactly. And that's, I think we are just about to get another Naked Gun. They're in talks about booting that up again.
Yeah.
And for all of the like we're booting everything, I do
Right.
honestly feel like no, let's boot that again because that whole genre of comedy is kind of like the Welsh language. Like there's a few of them, but they're definitely not talking the same language to each other, and so they just kind of pop in and pop out.
Right. I heard, as a bit of an aside, I heard that the Bad Boys franchise is 29 years old, like
Hmm.
between the original Bad Boys and the one that's, of course, coming out this summer.
Came out
29
just
years.
now.
Like those men have lived a lifetime
Have lived a
between
whole
those
damn
movies.
ass life. Yeah, and Will Smith still looks great. Yeah.
It's true.
That movie just came out, and as much as I am not neither here nor there about the franchise, it's fun to watch. I'll probably watch it when it comes to streaming because I'm in it for the like. Just sometimes I'll watch a cut from a Michael Mann movie as a Michael Bay
Okay.
movie as opposed to Michael Mann movie. So I'll watch a
Yeah.
Michael Mann movie and be stunned and breathtaking. I'll watch a Michael Bay movie and just be like, I didn't, I didn't know you could do that. It's like
Right.
they say that ska music is what you imagine is the music inside a 13-year-old boy's head when the waiter says, "I'll bring more mozzarella sticks."
Right.
I feel like
Yep.
the visual is also the Michael Mann. Like but it's a who doesn't like more mozzarella sticks? So I
Right.
will
Of
watch
course.
that. But
Yeah. There's no
until
nutrition and it's too greasy, but it's fucking
it's
great.
great. Until that movie came out, there was all this conversation about movie theaters are going to die. Nobody's seeing
Yeah.
movies. Furiosa came out and it just didn't do any kind of money. Also, it came out on Memorial Day weekend. That was one of the nicest on the East Coast. So like I don't
Yeah.
nobody's anyway. Bad Boys came out, and because it is kind of like Cats, and it's got like a large
Right.
international market,
Oh.
it broke the office records in half. And it
Wow.
basically was like, "Oh, I'm sorry, our movie theater's dead. Shut the fuck up. Shut up. Shama."
Yeah. I mean, I'm not psyched that a fourth or fifth sequel in a franchise that's just like a dumb buddy cop movie with race jokes is the recipe for $1 billion box office take. Like, that's not the kind of movies of which we need more. But yeah, I mean, it is the kind of movie that's fun to go see on a big screen with speakers that peel your face off, and
Yeah,
you got a big
and
bowl of popcorn in your lap. So
yeah. And I
yeah,
will
that's
take it with 2 male leads that are black. I'll take a minority male cast.
for sure.
Um, you know, I'm happy that movie theaters are not dead, although like that was such a stupid sentence to say. Like, oh, movie theaters,
Yeah,
they're never gonna die. You would it would take so much longer of a trend than that. Um, and we covered this in the first episode. Say the second episode about Bad Boys.
right.
The thing is that it's enough money generated in for the individual movie theaters to feel like there's an influx and like they're stable and they'll continue to stay open. I don't have the numbers in front of me, and I'll put it in the corrections and omissions. But up until now, there has been and you'll tell me the mathematical word for this. There is a curve for the cost of making the movie, and it's going
Right.
like this. And then
Yeah.
there's a curve for how much the movie brings in, and
Right.
those two curves are meeting.
Yeah.
Where like the
Yeah.
first one cost almost nothing because nobody like they use Michael Mann's own cars.
Wow.
They like
Yeah.
nobody believed in it. And so when it made as much money as I think it made like $80 million more than what it cost. But like the
Right.
last one made like $20 million more than what it cost. And it cost like
Yeah.
$150 million. And it made $170 million. I'm making these numbers up, they're
Yeah.
rough. So you're like, oh shit, that's so much money. And you're like, you're forgetting how much this movie costs to make. Not the $8 million of ice pirates, let me tell you what.
Yeah, that's right. Well, yeah, there's definitely a diminishing return. Although, one could argue that like all that $150 million got pumped into the economy, and a bunch of, you know, production assistants and computer animators and whatever stunt drivers all got
Mhm.
paid. It's generating uh, GDP or whatever.
I
But
would love to see a breakdown because I wonder how much
yeah,
goes into executives because we were talking with Jared about the like.
right. The stupid, profit margin and
Mhm,
just abject thievery, like
mhm,
just hiding millions of dollars that you just scoop off the cream.
mhm.
Yeah, and I do think that's a bad trend, and it's the reason that everything is getting retreaded, because it's more reliable to do a remake of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles than it is to come out with a totally unique, fresh story. Like we just watched Scavenger's Reign, which was the best
Mm.
sci-fi we've seen in years, but it's not popular enough, and it might not get picked up for another season. Like this is the whole problem where, you know, the what is profitable with the mainstream audiences is not the same as what is good filmmaking.
And that's even conflated with you didn't give it any PR. You didn't tell anyone HBO, you didn't tell anyone you had this fucking show on. Period.
Right.
I own HBO. We watch it all the time. We put it on every Sunday, and it
Yep.
didn't tell me that there was a sci-fi horror animated thing, and all I do is watch animated horror and sci-fi. Like that's a
Yeah.
failure. That's a failure of your algorithms. You didn't even need to do a PR push. You just needed to do an algorithm push on your own subscribers, you lazy shit.
Yeah.
So,
You're harvesting our data left, right, and center. You know who the fucking audience is. We are the audience, and you didn't tell us about it.
didn't tell us about it. And you almost wonder, is that like a roots thing where like you decided you didn't like
Yeah.
this and you don't want to have to be held to a season two? So now that
Right.
Netflix has it, and now has it and is doing the shittiest of all things where they're like, we're not even really going to say if you watch it, we'll do a season two. We're just going to not say anything. So here's some IP we bought. Speculate.
Hmm.
And that's frustrating.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and I don't understand if there is this profit model. Like, well, wouldn't it profit more if you promoted it?
Yes.
It doesn't, like, the expensive part is not promoting it. So just fucking do that. And then if it turns out to be worth the expense of producing it, then you can do more of that. But like, yeah, I don't get it.
And why are we on HBO if not to use your large PR reach?
Right. Yeah. And what used to be the cachet of your brand, although you're taking a steaming shit on that all the time,
Yeah, put
adding
some more commercials
commercials.
in. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's very interesting the value in for the value out.
Yeah.
Because if it doesn't cost anything and you still like it, people are still gonna like it. And it's a dangerous dance because once people noticed that they liked Bad Boys and they started putting more money in, quality does
Right.
kind of reach its everything reaches a point where it can't get any better. There's too many hands in the pot, too many people are looking at this. It's like you have to make something and then get the fuck out.
Yeah. They actually would have been better off. Well, they would have had a better, like, return on investment if they had stopped after the first one,
Yeah.
because that was the lightning in the bottle, and
Mhm.
then everything else has diluted that.
Mhm.
Um, I'm not sure I can totally explain in a coherent way why, but I'm reminded of that thing about, like, a monkey will be happy with one grape unless you give the other monkey 10 grapes, and then the first grape monkey is pissed off. It's like you think you should be, and like making 20 million on $150 million movie is kind of mediocre, but making 20 million on a $40 million movie would be awesome. But it's the same 20 million. So like, what do you need here? And why do you need to make a $150 million movie when it's only going to get you 20 million anyway? It's not going to, I don't,
Mhm. It's
I
I
don't
think it
have the numbers in my head for like what the big Avengers movies, grossed
Mhm.
like 17 billion or some shit, but
Mhm.
that's that's a huge risk for how expensive they are, and
Mhm.
so many of them don't. And like, well, you could make 10 pretty good movies instead of one of those, you know.
Yes. And that's what Cord Jefferson said in his acceptance
Right,
speech this year at
right,
the Oscars
exactly.
is like, you know how many minority films and new filmmakers could make a film if we just made one less Transformers or one
Yeah,
less Marvel film a year. I don't understand how much it takes to make stuff because, I feel it definitely feels like if you gave me $8 million now, I could do a better movie than Ice Pirates. Still set it
yes,
in space and like lean into it. And
sure.
yet it seemed like at the time there was absolutely no possible way. And a lot of times when people talk about this, the first thing they want to say is, and I think you'd said at the top, like, oh, the actors are probably getting paid more than they're probably worth. And you're like, that's the first thing you need to make a movie is actors. So if you get rid of the actors, we definitely
Yeah,
don't have a movie. I mean, we could have them do it in their own personal clothing. So I guess costumes a little like, like once you
yeah,
start to take stuff away, you start to go into the independent film where like, well, these actors were paid in credit and somebody gave them pizza. This is the quality of what you're gonna get.
yeah,
So we gotta invest a little bit. And what's really more interesting about the thing with Bad Boys is the $20 million profit on your first film, that like say that was the amount that they made on Bad Boys 1, that went to less people because there was
mhm,
less people willing to invest in it. So not only did you make more, if you look at your initial investment, less people had to split that. It's
right,
it's this fear that you can't come up with a formula for a new story. I can say this is how many people went and saw the last Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie. This is the base of what we think we can make if we make another Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie. That's really,
right,
it's just a fear of absolute unknowns.
right. Yeah, but even maybe people are sick of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and it totally fizzles.
Mhm.
And it's interesting because I think we both love the duelists and all of the resourceful stuff that Ridley
Mm.
Scott came up with to work with a very limited budget and make his mise en scène look rich. So in some ways, and like there's in some ways there is a cleverness and a resourcefulness where the budget is small and it begets more genius and more
Mhm.
kind of clever creative resourcefulness. And then on the other hand, the low budget is like, well, I don't know, my cousin painted a backdrop and it looks like shit. So, like what you need is talented people who really care and want to push themselves to produce something amazing, and at whatever level that happens, or whatever financial
Mm.
level, they're going to do something phenomenal. But
Mhm.
you can't just buy that.
Mm.
And
Mhm.
the studios, like, if anything, they squelch that because they can't take a risk on somebody coming up with something clever on a shoestring, because they think like that's too much lightning in a bottle, and if it doesn't work they're going to look stupid and have squandered money. It's
But yeah,
and it's
that's
like
really fun.
it's how community theater can be more creative than Broadway, but
Mhm.
can also be so miserable you can't sit through the fucking 2 hours of
Yeah.
Oklahoma.
It's a lot of spaghetti against the wall. And it's funny because 'cause I'm definitely thinking of way more cases of a studio asking a brilliant director to rein their budget in than the latter where they're like, "Oh, we can give more money to these poor guys." Like, they're always trying to take money back, but I can also think of a couple of times where it's like, "Okay, did you need to light that entire town on fire for the shot you didn't even record?"
Right, yes, the death of oh god, what's the
Carnival.
Carnival? Thank you. Yep.
Yeah. I'm also thinking Baron
Classic.
Munchausen, which had Terry Gilliam is notorious for being
Right.
uncontrollable with his budget, but then also, James Cameron was uncontrollable with his budget for Titanic, and that was justified. So, like,
And he
you're
was
really
right.
right. It is about the situation. Can you look at the script? Can you look at what you have and tell as a producer or tell as a studio that you have something good? You should be. That's your fucking job. It's not like me
Yeah, right.
watching a trailer and being like, "I guess I thought I was gonna like this and I didn't."
Yeah. I suspect that there is much less competition for the studio jobs than there is for actors and directors. Like those actors and directors actually get evaluated for the quality of their work, and studio executives, are just rich people.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mm-hmm.
or
Yeah,
or
and if you
their
think about, like,
father ran the studio. So,
I bet every single studio gets the same script. So for every movie that you're like, "Holy shit, did you hear that Columbia, Paramount, MGM, all of them passed on Everything Everywhere at Once before it got to A24." Like, they were the last people to get it. So you're like, "Oh,
yeah,
yeah, well, the people that don't know what the fuck they're doing." So anytime there's a good movie, a bunch of people missed on it. Anytime there's a
yeah,
great performance, there's a bunch of actors who didn't get it. Like, hey, that was always supposed
yeah,
to be somebody else.
right, right,
Yeah.
yeah.
With
It's awkward.
with this movie,
Yeah.
how would you have fixed it? Do you feel like there were ways that you could have fixed it beyond simply saying give it more money?
Oh yeah. I don't think more money would have necessarily made any difference. I think. Uh, I think putting more energy into character development and relationships would
Mhm.
have made us more engaged with the people in the story, because like we don't really have a reason to care about, especially the main character, like the lead. Like
Mhm.
he's just this, I guess, cute dunderhead, and
Mhm.
he's running around, and like there's
Mhm.
no there's no sympathy for the character, and the conflict is really uh pretty superficial. Like, I guess there's the Templars who control the ice, and then maybe you can find, but I don't know, because I think like in Star Wars, the Empire is a much bigger bad guy, and the rebels are much more sympathetic. Um, and this movie totally failed to establish the characters or the conflict in a way that would have been compelling.
Mhm.
Um, so I think it's more about the story than it is about the production. Because movies with heart, you'll forgive a lot of the shortcomings, the technical shortcomings.
Mhm.
Um, but this movie just didn't really have much to say.
Yeah.
Um, so and I thought um, one of the surprisingly effective parts of it was in the sort of climax, spoiler alert, whatever, where they're all aging in the weird time warp.
Mm. Mm.
And, like every time the camera turns to them, they're like, the gray beard is longer. There's more. So, like they're, that captured a moment that would be emotionally resonant.
Mhm.
And it was just like a silly sci-fi effect. But
Yeah.
I think that worked.
Yeah. You're absolutely right, 'cause I remember watching, Black Hole, the '71 Disney film with you,
Right.
and being like, "Is
79 or whatever.
Yeah. Is Ernest Borgnine just wearing his own pants and shoes?" But
And
the
penny
story
loafers.
was yeah, it was so compelling. I didn't give a fuck about any other aspect of stuff falling apart, and
Yeah, you can
I
literally see the string the robot is hanging on as it like flies around, but
yeah, but
that's
I don't
fine.
remember the string. It's
Yeah.
funny though, like, how that works. With this one, I really, really agree with you. I think I would have forgiven a lot more if there was a cohesive story, because it felt like our lead was a Jack Burton. Like, he was a dumb lead. And so I was like, oh, yeah, the story isn't going to be about him. It's going to be about other people. And then it didn't really wind up being about other people. And in Big Trouble Little China, they're trying to like keep the world from being destroyed, like, from fighting pure evil. And here it's like, ice. And with all of this like water conservation, the sex scene in a rainstorm?
Right. Right. And we didn't
What?
really see people suffering without water. I mean, it's obvious they
No.
would, but
Mhm.
we didn't, there weren't any consequences. There
Yeah.
were no stakes.
Mhm. Yeah. So I think I would have been like, you can make a script funny, and I think about people who have to punch up scripts like this. But they didn't just need a comedy punch up. They needed a like reevaluation of the script. And it's so funny to be like, okay, well, we're gonna take $12 million out of the budget. Why not just cancel the movie? Just cancel the
Right.
movie, give the guy a different contract for something. Like you effectively, instead of saving $12 million, you wasted 8.
You wasted 8. Yeah. Yeah. I guess there's the sort of stranded cost problem once you're
Mm,
into it, but
mhm,
yeah, just didn't seem, it seemed hamstrung and
mhm.
destined for mediocrity at best.
Yeah, yeah. It's really interesting, and I wish that they did more, like, direct education or convers like, I would attend 1,000 TED Talks about how to make media cheaper, how to write your story to lean towards these things. Because you're right, I feel like Ridley Scott could have sat down with people and been like, "Here's the X, Y, and Z of budgeting filmmaking, like, here, turn the
Yeah.
camera around, use the same tent, use the same 6 people, like, somebody needs to speak to this more because there's so much bloat that it feels
And, this
impossible to
movie,
make a movie."
yeah. And this movie reused a bunch of the Logan's Run, like
Mhm,
backgrounds and sets and
mhm.
special vehicles and special effects. It's just like, but like, God, I think the low point for me in Ice Pirates is the like sped up motorcycle chase through the like corridor of the space station or whatever, and
Oh,
it
yeah.
looked like the Batmobile trying to be fast in the 1960s Batman. Like, are
Mhm,
you fucking kidding me? This is the special effect you're going
mhm.
with. And it wasn't even funny, like, and it wasn't an important scene. It didn't even need to be there, but it was just a schlocky gag.
Yeah.
um yeah,
You start to come up
just
across that thing where, like, well, if we cut that scene, this movie can't be considered feature length anymore.
right. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, so, I overall, let's get into the end bits here, and we'll ask this
sure.
of both of ourselves.
Right.
Overall, did you like this film?
uh no.
Mm,
I guess not. Like you said at the top, I didn't hate it, but I can't say that I'm above 50% in my opinion of it.
mhm, mhm. Well, when you remember this film, do you think about the experience of watching this with someone else? Like, did you watch this with, Steve a lot as a kid, or
I remember seeing it when I was like even younger than a high schooler, so it was
Okay.
probably like middle school or whatever. And I can tell you the castration conveyor belt made a huge impression. Um,
I'm
and
seeing castration conveyor belt at a punk show later today.
there you go. Yeah, their original work was more edgy. Um,
Mm,
so uh, I think it was. It's sort of like some of the fantasy novels I read when I was a kid that I remember
mm.
being amazing, and then I go back and read them, and I'm like, shoot, I'm a better author than this now. Oh well. So, and that's fine. Like again, it's a Saturday matinee kind of like sci-fi schlock action comedy, and that's there's a place for that.
Absolutely, absolutely. When I was talking to Ari about the Emperor's New Groove episode, she was like super worried that she had misremembered the film and that I wouldn't like it, because she had such reverence around the experience of watching the film. And there is something to be said for like the crappiest film of all time can be the best film if every time you watch it, you and your family just have a good time.
Sure, right, absolutely.
Yeah.
And like Clerks was a very inexpensive movie that did very well. And there
Mhm.
is terrible acting and like very poor production all over the place. But, it's beloved for what it is. So,
Yeah, well, I think for me, and this happens a lot when I watch movies now, as an adult, especially because I'm trying to make movies. Clerks was the first movie I remember seeing that I genuinely liked and everyone else genuinely liked without any shame, without any like, "Oh, I know it's like a stupid campy horror movie." They were like, "No, this is a good movie." Even though there was bad acting and the
Mhm.
scenes weren't always shot that great, and like it was, he paid for it by charging credit cards to other credit cards. There's a
Right.
$40,000 budget on that film. That's just impossible to do something so that is truly lightning in a bottle. So
Yeah.
it for whatever you like it or you don't like it, that film showed so many people that they could be a filmmaker if they had a good enough story. And that's
Yeah.
the message I want people to hear. Like you just
Right.
you can tweak how you shoot it, you can tweak what is the actors are, but if you have a good story at the middle, everyone will get excited about that.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. And yeah, think how many Clerks could be made for the price of a Marvel movie, for God's sake.
Mhm. Mhm. And so it's a double-edged sword. When I watch a movie, like I just watched We Have a Ghost, which is I believe a 40 or 50 million dollar budget. Because I did that no budget, like no budget. No, we
Right.
shot it on an iPhone.
Truly homemade.
Uh a homemade movie. We have ghosts at home, and I thought, "Well, let me see what the difference a couple of tens of millions of dollars do for you." It makes you watch about 145 more minutes than you have to is what it does, 'cause that's fucking garbage. That was garbage. If you had a story, why'd you film it? Why'd you film
Sure.
this? So
Yeah.
upsetting. So whenever I watch a movie that is not great, I often think to myself like, "Well, I could have done better." And that's exciting to me.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I could see it both being, motivation or inspiration and also a little resentment. Like,
Oh, yeah.
why are these yahoos getting all this money to make this schlock when I and other talented people could be doing something so much
Mhm.
more
Well,
substantial, more
2
quality?
answers. Probably they're somebody's kid, and then also I'm sitting on my couch. Like, you still gotta show up to the game, so,
Yeah.
like,
Nope,
keep
that's fair.
showing up
Right.
every day, right?
Right. Yep.
Yeah,
100%.
that's the hard part. It's also kind of a I found it in the last place I looked scenario where, like, all the time actors will do these, like, acceptance speeches or, like, the win an Emmy for the first performance and they're like, "I've been acting for 30 years and I was just about to give up." And like plenty of people do give up and they don't get that.
Oh,
But
yeah.
like,
Sure. Right.
you gotta keep showing up and it fucking sucks. But
Yeah.
yeah.
Yep. So even though I didn't like it, I would kind of recommend Ice Pirates just because, like, I think kind of it's fun to have watched or whatever, and like
Mhm.
I enjoyed seeing young Ron Perlman
Oh
and
yeah.
Angelica
Yeah.
Houston and and John Matasak. Um, so if you're kind of in the Saturday matinee vibe or even like an MST3K vibe, it's worth seeing.
I definitely think it's a good MST3K vibe. I would even check to see if there might be a real track for it, a riff track for it.
Yeah, it's
Definitely
entirely
watch it with another person because I enjoyed watching it with you. This way that we could turn to each other and be like, "I'm sorry, is this a rain sex scene in a water like
You forgot the whole premise of your sci-fi environment for this totally unnecessary sex scene.
everybody get inside the rain sex simulator whenever they're thirsty." I don't
I guess, right? Yeah.
It's some kind of metaphor for a jacket. Anyway,
I'm
so
just
yeah,
saying, Dune did it better. That's all I got to say.
that's all I'm that's all I would definitely recommend it under the same exact circumstances. It's interesting for what it is.
Yeah, yeah. It's like about as good as the old Planet of the Apes movies. The would-be reveal at the end is pretty easy to see coming, and
Yeah. I don't think you'll watch this movie being angry that someone recommended that you watch it.
I would hope not. But
Oh, yeah. Any final thoughts?
well, I you know, part of me wants to be glad that this imperfect movie got made, but I also kind of on the other hand, feel like it's imperfect because it was undermined. And I don't think this was anybody's dream or vision. This was more like, just a product. And like the guy who wrote Kroll wrote the original screenplay for this. So it was probably
Oh,
like kind of a big sci-fi adventure, and
yeah.
like Kroll has some dumb stuff too, but
I like it
everybody
though.
remembers Kroll, and it's sort of beloved in the pantheon.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, it's I guess in the end it's just sort of an object lesson of all the ups and downs of the Hollywood machinery.
Yeah.
And and there's stuff to be enjoyed, and then overall maybe it wasn't worth it.
It's almost exactly on the edge of that. Like maybe it wasn't
Yeah,
worth it, but I'm also glad it got made. It's the most
I know we're
ambivalent and truly the version of the word ambivalent, which is not to not care, but to care too much for both sides.
right. Yeah, I was going to say we're waffling so hard. This is like we're completely failing to come down with a conclusion for the throngs of listeners.
I really feel like this is going to be like it's determined by the user whether or
Right.
not you will really like this or kind of be meh about it. I really don't think that if you're listening to a podcast that is about esoteric films that you're going to be upset about having watched this. Like
Right.
I think your mom would be like, "What did you make me watch?" if
Yeah.
we made her sit down and watch this.
Right. Yeah, but she has felt that way about great films too. So
Fair enough. Fair enough. Like my dad watched Eraserhead and got really angry, like super angry. You can't even bring it up again. He's so angry about it. Like I don't think anyone will
right.
watch this film and leave with my dad in
Yeah.
19 watching it in a movie theater for the first time level angry.
No, I don't think Ice Pirates is provocative.
Although, if you did find it provocative, please write to me. I need to
That's true.
know
Yep.
why.
Yeah, yeah. Representations of the Templar Knights were offensive.
All right. Well, I think that's pretty much everything I feel like I have to say about this film.
Yep, yep. It's
No.
sometimes you watch a movie and you don't always like it that much, and that's still okay.
That's totally fine. You can even still talk about it.
Thanks for having me on.
Always, always. Thank you so much for coming on. And now I will finally know the difference between pirates and ice pirates.
Yes. Good.
One tiny band who must bust their buns, battling the masters of all the water in the galaxy. The evil Mithradoids, famous for not being nice.
Killing you would be too easy. I have something better in mind.
Now it's time for corrections and omissions. Part 1. Who played the villain in Hudson Hawk? The character was called Darwin Mayflower, the brother to Minerva Mayflower. They were a bunch of eccentric billionaires who partnered up with a corrupt CIA officer, George Kaplan, to steal 3 of Leonardo da Vinci's designs and create his La Machina del Oro for the sake of world domination. He was played by Richard E. Grant. Scott was right, it was Richard. He just couldn't come up with the E. Grant part. Minerva is played by Sandra Bernhardt, and George is played by James Cogburn. You should probably check out Hudson Hawk, even though I didn't totally like it. Maybe I'll try it again, now that I have a new appreciation for it in a context. This film was not John Matuszak's only other film before his death. John Daniel Matuszak, named Toots, was an American football defensive end in the National Football League who later became an actor after retiring from the Oakland Raiders in 1981. He actually has 36 acting credits, appearing in television shows such as MASH, Trapper John, The Dukes of Hazzard, Silver Spoons, The Fall Guy, Benson, The A-Team, Miami Vice, Perfect Strangers, and even an episode of Ghost Rider. He was also in films like The Goonies, of course, One Crazy Summer, and his last one was the 1990s action comedy Down the Drain. Who was the former football player who was in Revenge of the Nerds? I misspoke a bit here and said that they were also in Blood of Heroes, a top-notch Rutger Hauer film, but not the one that I meant, which was Bloodsport, which is a Jean-Claude Van Damme film that they were in. I'm of course speaking of Behemoth 6'4" actor Donald Gibb. He actually attended the University of New Mexico on a basketball scholarship, then transferred to the University of San Diego, where he played football and was a member of the varsity basketball team. He briefly had a roster spot on the San Diego Chargers before unfortunately suffering an injury in an automobile accident. That injury led to him turning to acting, beginning with a small, uncredited role in Stripes and Conan the Barbarian. Was this Ron Perlman's second movie? Yes, it was. He'd only done Quest for Fire up to then, and technically also an episode of Ryan's Hope in 1979. What other movies had Anjelica Huston done up to this point? She had done 10 other credited roles up to this point in 1984, with her career starting as Claudia in A Walk with Death. She was also in The Postman Always Rings Twice, and This Is Spinal Tap before this role in Ice Pirates. She was then, and is now, too good for this film. Fun fact, her first technical role was as Agent Mimi's Hands in Casino Royale in 1967. She's not credited for this film, though. She's also uncredited on One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest as Woman in Crowd, so that's a fun Easter egg to find on your next viewing. Scott misspoke slightly with the years on the release for the original 3 Star Wars. He did get Return of the Jedi correct, it was 1983, but he was off slightly on A New Hope and The Empire Strikes Back, and I know that fandom is a little intense, so let's make sure we get it exactly right, although in all fairness, he was off by a year late, and chances are that was just the year he actually physically saw it in, because you don't run out right away to get to see it. But A New Hope, the very first one, was released in May of 1977, not in 78, and The Empire Strikes Back was released in May of 1980, not in 81. He was correct, though, again, he was correct in saying that Return of the Jedi was released in 1983. The exact quote Mel Brooks gave studio executives when they recommended that the surreal scenes from Elephant Man be cut was, "We screened the film to bring you up to date as to the status of that venture. Do not misconstrue this as our soliciting the input of raging primitives," was the one. Scott got it very close. I think he said maybe troglodytes, simians. The actual phrase was raging primitives. Again, Brooks was the producer on Elephant Man, which was directed by David Lynch. Uncredited producer, because he didn't want people to see his name on the film and think it was a comedy. But he had seen David Lynch do Eraserhead and thought, this is a good pairing here. Let's get him to adapt this. And if you haven't seen Elephant Man, I highly suggest it. I recently watched it for the first time, and I thought it was really good. Although this may be the only time in my entire life that I might agree a little bit with the executives and say that the transitions between the surrealism and the not surrealism were not cohesive enough. It felt a little jarring. But that's probably the point, though. I don't know. I liked it, and I also didn't like it. I could see why. I kept thinking, I can't believe they let him make this movie. In which case, I'm here for that, and you should check it out. If Ice Pirates cost $8 million to make and Girl in the Basement cost $3,000 to make, what percentage difference is that? Well, Girl in the Basement is 0.038% of the budget used to make Ice Pirates. You can go onto YouTube And find Girl in the Basement by visiting @MovieRuntime. That is my channel, and I have that under my recommended short films. You can also plug it in to Google, plug it into YouTube. Just don't wind up on the Hallmark one. It is Girl in the Basement from 2015. It should be about 30 minutes long and not feature Judd Nelson. If you're looking at Judd Nelson and you're looking at a film that's over an hour, that's not us. It's not the couch that ate people that Patton Oswalt does a bit about on his 2007 stand-up CD, Werewolves and Lollipops, although in my defense, he does call the film Deathbed, the bed that eats people, so there's a bit of my confusion. It's actually called Deathbed, the bed that eats, from 1977, and that's by writer-director George Barry. It is, quote, a bed possessed by a demon spirit consuming its users alive. That is a 1 hour and 17 minutes that you can lose. For better or for worse, it is unrated. You can rent this one, this perfect little gem. It's got 4 out of 10 stars, so perfect is, I haven't seen it, so do not watch this and say I told you to. But you can watch it for $2.99 on Amazon Prime Video, and then you can leave a 5-star review, and maybe someday Paul, June, and Jason will read your review on How Did This Get Made. How much did the latest Bad Boys movie, Bad Boys 4, Ride or Die, not Bad Boys for Life, because that was the 3rd movie, and that will never cease to make me mad. How much did it make versus the amount that it costs to make? Well, Bad Boys Ride or Die cost $100 million to make and has, at this current point in time, pulled in $130 million worldwide. Of course, that number is definitely going to go up because this is only the first couple of weeks that it has been out, so you can expect to see that one go up. Just to give you some perspective, here's the numbers on the rest of the Bad Boys franchise. We definitely will see more than a $30 million profit on Bad Boys 4. Otherwise, it will be epically considered a failure for the franchise. Bad Boys 1 cost $19 million to make. Again, real shoestring for the budget of a kind of film that it wound up being. Again, they borrowed stuff. They did the best that they could. $19 million. Brings in $141 million. That's $128 million of profit on something that almost nobody believed in. So, Bad Boys 2 costs $130 million to make. Holy bejeebus. That's $111 million. That's just shy of what the profit from the first one was to make the second one. But don't worry, because it makes approximately $270 million in the box office. Its profit is $143 million. Bad Boys 2 is the most profitable one in the franchise right now. Bad Boys 3, well, cost $90 million. They're like, hey, maybe we can pull it back a little bit. And it made $206 million. Now, that's a profit of $116 million, but it is considered not as good as the rest of them because of that thinner profit margin. Will Bad Boys 4 be the most profitable? Hard to say. I myself have not yet seen it, but I probably will give it a chance, considering we did do Bad Boys 1 as our second episode, and it proved to me that there are things in there that are really cool and fun to watch, and it will be an adrenaline junkies kind of joy. Is there an MST3K, Mystery Science Theater 3000, or riff tracks, which is what Mystery Science Theater 3000 became when it stopped being on the air? You could get these little downloadable tracks to play at the same time as playing a movie. So you play it on the TV and then press play on your computer. As long as you press play at the exact same time, the track would line up and it would be like you had MST3K reading to you while you were watching the show together. There is a riff track for Ice Pirates. While it was never featured on MST3K, they do have a $1.99 riff track titled Ice Pirates One Man Band. That will be in the liner notes. You can see that link and access it in case you want to watch this film. I would suggest trying it with a riff tracks. It has not yet been covered by How Did This Get Made, but I do believe it is a perfect movie for them to do. And our last fact for corrections and omissions: what was the budget of Disney's 1979 Black Hole? Well, $20 million. Yikes. When you consider that the 1984 Ice Pirates had 8, that really puts it in perspective. And that's all for corrections and omissions.
The Ice Pirates. See startling special effects. See depravity in zero gravity. See glamour girls from another galaxy. See kung fu robots. And delight in the mysteries of the seventh world. The one place in the universe to get a decent glass of water.
And that's it for episode 14, Ice Pirates with Scott Tundermann. I want to reward you for making it all the way to the end by giving you a factoid that didn't make it into part 1, part 2, or the intro. We did tell you that before it was docked down to $8 million, this was a script written by Krull writer Stanford Sherman. When they took all that money away, they needed to make it a comedy, and so they brought on writer-director Stuart Raffel to punch up the script and make it a comedy. Obviously, we kind of agree that he did not succeed in doing that. If you know some of the other stuff that he's worked on, you might understand the quality of Ice Pirates. He wrote and directed Mannequin 2. Fine. But he also wrote and directed Mac and Me. Side note, both of those had a $13 million budget. Mac and Me, if you're unfamiliar, is about an alien that comes to Earth and is seeking water. He is escaping a desert planet and needs water, so oh my god. Is this guy like the next Waterworld writer? Why this obsession? But the real thing to know about Mac and Me, if you don't know, is its association with actor Paul Rudd on the Conan O'Brien show on TBS. This starts in 2004 when Paul Rudd comes on the show, and instead of playing the clip for his movie, he plays a clip from Mac and Me, where a kid in a wheelchair is unable to stop the brakes on the top of a cliff. He rolls right off the edge of the cliff, and they show you the wheelchair going with a mannequin straight into the water, and you then get to see the alien Mac, who sees this and then rescues the kid, and that's how they bond and have their friendship start. This happens 11 times while on the show between 2004 and 2021, when Conan O'Brien stops having his show. In 2005, he does it for the 40-year-old version. In 2006, he does it again. In 2008, he does it for role models. In 2011, he does it for Our Idiot Brother. In 2012, This Is 40. Same thing 2013 for Anchorman 2. 2014, Paralympian Elena Nichols comes on, and she plays a clip of Mac and Me because she's so invested in this. 2015, Paul Rudd's in Ant-Man, and the studio execs for Ant-Man say you absolutely cannot go on Conan and play a clip of Mac and Me. You have to play a clip with Ant-Man. So he intercuts clips of Ant-Man with Mac and Me and plays the Mac and Me clip. Does it again in 2019, but he twins the aliens at the end. And then in June of 2021, Bill Hader's having an interview with Conan. It's the end of the series. He's just about to go off the air. Conan thinks he has avoided another Mac and Me, and Paul Rudd crashes the interview and plays the clip. If you like, you can see on the liner notes a entry where we've got all of these POPSUGAR, put them together so you can look at every single one of these appearances and clips. This episode was very, very interesting. It was definitely about the effect of positive nostalgia for media and how you can remember something far different than it actually was, and it may not really hold up all that well. These glasses that we put on, the way that we kind of edit out the stuff we didn't like and things that we liked when we were younger, it's almost a coping mechanism where your brain just kind of removes the bits that weren't so great. The downside of that is then you can then recommend a movie to yourself as an adult later on that you didn't totally care for. And even though we didn't enjoy Ice Pirates, and I might not recommend watching it without the riff track or a good, like, we're going to watch a schlock movie, a how did this get made attitude to it. It really wound up being interesting to look at with regards to budget and rewriting scripts and how Hollywood can really just gum up the entire process and create not a good film. I genuinely wish I could see the script for the original Ice Pirates, written by Stanford Sherman. I've looked online. You can't really find that. You can spend almost $500 to get a copy of an original script from what we saw, but you can also just send me that $500 and I will, give you the equality of nothing as well. You just burn it too. You'll be fine. But, you've got to find these silver linings in these kinds of things when you are taking a risk and watching a movie that you might not like. If you are the kind of person for whom an experience like this would really upset you, I want to say don't watch movies you don't like, but I really, really want to say, go to a therapist. Talk about this with somebody. It shouldn't affect you that much. You might want to let go a little, and I think that if you do this, you might feel a little less uptight and anxious in all the rest of your life. I mean, I want to be curious and not judgmental, as Ted Lasso tells us, but, these are not really important things. I often think about what my bosses used to say to me. Ari, who's been on the episodes many times, we worked in dispensaries together, and at the end of the day, we would say, we're not saving lives. We're just selling weed. And that's what is happening here. You're not saving lives. You're just watching a movie. If you don't like it, at best, you've wasted a couple of hours. And if you're the kind of person for whom all of your hours are very important and very, very costly, I'm proud of you. Maybe don't watch this movie. Of course, you can see me, hear me, talk to me live if you join us at 8 p.m. this Tuesday, the 18th, on Movie Night Extravaganza. That's going to be on YouTube, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We are talking about Sean Baker's 2015 Tangerine as part of their Pride Month. We'll be having Bam on there. I have not yet met him. I'm super excited to get to chat with them. Of course, I am covering for Conan, so Conan Neutron will not be on that episode, but you will still see Christina Oakes, Forrest Miller, and Andy J. World. It should be exciting. I'm hyped anytime I get to go on the show. I haven't been on in a bit because I am recovering from surgery, which wound up going way better than I thought, and I'm already pretty ambulatory. I'm always pleased to be a pessimist and then be pleasantly surprised by how it turned out not as bad as I had expected. My short film, We Have Ghosts at Home. In the liner notes, you can see it on YouTube. It's only 5 minutes long. I would really appreciate it if you gave it a watch. It's a comedy horror. So don't worry if you watched Girl in the Basement or if you heard about Girl in the Basement and you're like, I can't handle such gory body horror. This is funny. It's not gory. It's very light and very easy. The title is a play on the concept of we have food at home, where you want to go to McDonald's and you often get told, we don't have to go to McDonald's. We have food at home. And we all know the quality of the food that we have at home. I am still Movie Runtime on TikTok, on YouTube. That's where you can get that short, We Have Ghosts at Home. And I am Little Deadly Creature on Instagram. Although if you type in Movie Runtime, you'll get my backup account, which will boot you right over to Little Deadly Creature. And it even says Movie Runtime in my name on that account because I'm really trying to help you find me. Help you help me. I always appreciate you if you join me there. It's a lot of fun stuff. I'm usually posting at least once a day, once every other day. So if you don't have enough of me in your life, I can be up your ass and to the left on social media. Thank you, everyone who made it all the way to the very, very end, as we are right here, right now. I always tell you that I appreciate you. I'm lying. No, I'm not lying. I do appreciate you. And I wish you the very best in the rest of your day today. Cheers. This has been What If I Don't Like It with your host, Katie Baldessaro. See you later, Space Cowboy.